Hi, this is Kevin Trainer. Welcome to my tutorial on how to load the files associated with the Murach third edition MySQL book onto your computer that uses macOS. Just a note for YouTubers who are not in my class, who may have found their way here. The value is pretty specific to my class in this tutorial, um, and there's not going to be a lot of value for the general public. Okay, so what are we doing? Well, let's take a look. We are uh, we're going to load the data that we're going to be using throughout the course. And I've made it available to my students in the current semester. It's on our weekly schedule and it's under week one. Now, you have a link to our weekly schedule to get there easily. I'm getting here the more general way. And here I am. And now I can select week one. And I'm on week one. And down at the bottom of the page, I've got right under right under the notes, it says that this tutorial is going to be it's going to be up by tomorrow. There is a link that says Murach 3E files. So those are the files associated with the Joel Murach MySQL third edition book that we're going to be using. So what are we going to do? Well, we're going to download those on Mac OS. Typically, if you're configured like I am, you give it a click and you can see through the animation that it goes to downloads. Okay, so here I'm going to open up a new window in Finder, and I'm going to say I want it to point to downloads, which it does. And you're going to see that here I've got the zipped version of MySQL 3E data, and it's a zip file. Okay. Now, some people who have macOS, they have at some point they have configured their machine so when they downloaded a zip file, it'll go into downloads and it'll be immediately unzipped. Okay, so in that case, they would have a directory. Okay, so let's just unzip this. How do we unzip this? We're going to unzip it here in downloads. So I'm going to highlight it, right click, and I'm going to say, oh, no, instead of that, I'll do it the easy way. I'll double click it. Okay, so when I double click it, it will extract the data, and the default is to put it in the same directory. And you can see that the extracted data is all in a directory called MySQL 3E data. Okay, all right. Now, what are you going to call that, and where are you going to put it in your file system to make it easy to find and easy to use? Well, if you read the directions in the Murach book, when you download the data directly from his site, it's just called MySQL, and he tells you a place to put it. Now, in this case, I'm downloading it onto my my copy of macOS, which has a lot of files on it. So what works for me is to rename this, and I said I want to rename it, and I typically put a bunch of underscores in front of it, like let's put 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this causes it to sort to the top of my list in the directory where I put it. And where do I tend to keep the data that I'd like to use? I'd like to keep it in the Documents folder. So I'm just going to take this renamed directory. It's up to you. You can rename it to, yeah, I mean, you can have it called whatever you like. You don't have to put the underscores in front of it. You just have to remember where you put it, right? So I'm just going to take that. I'm going to pull it over and drop it into Documents. Okay. Now I'm going to go to Documents, and you'll see that's pretty far up there. Okay, it's right under Illinois Teaching Combined, which says to me that I need another underscore. Okay, so I'm going to further change the name to add yet one more underscore. And now it's always going to be up at the very top of my listing when I come to Documents. That's an old trick. You may have your own tricks. Feel free. Okay, so let's. This is what I'm going to call it, and this is where I'm going to use it. Let's double click on this in Finder and open it in its own directory. And here's what's in it. And the majority of what we have in here has come directly from the publisher site for our textbook, the third edition of the Joel Murach MySQL textbook. The only directory that we have in here that you wouldn't be able to download directly from the publisher site is this MGSEX starts. So I'm going to go through the directories here and tell you what we have. Okay, so book scripts. Let's open up that. Well, let's just expand it. Okay, so in book scripts, we have the scripts that are used in each of the chapters. So if you're reading through the chapter and you see a script that the author has provided, and you say to yourself, gee, I'd like to be able to run that. Okay, like for instance, chapter 3 is the first chapter in which we begin to learn how to code things like SQL select statements. So let's say that we wanted to open up the 8th example. Well, we could say we want to open with TextMate is a text editor that I use on the Mac all the time, so that sounds good. And we open it up, and it's going to open on another monitor, so I have to bring it over here. But here's what we have. We have one select, a second select, a third select, a fourth one. Okay. So when you're reading the text, if you'd like to run some of the examples, it's that easy. Okay. All right. What else have we got? So that's the book scripts. DB setup. That's what we're going to do before we're done here on the tutorial. We're going to run the DB setup. This is going to create the databases that are referred to within the chapters of the textbooks. There are 3 of them. They're called APEX and OM, and this will create all 3 of them. Okay. Diagrams. When we get to chapter 10, I think it is, we learn how to use the diagrammer feature of MySQL Workbench in order to design a database. And there's even a capability that you can forward engineer that design, and it will create the script that creates the schema for the database. And these are examples of databases that we could use for that. So I think if we open up this ap.mwb, we'll get the diagram for the AP database, and likewise for OMMWB, we would get the diagram for the OM database. Okay, but that's not until chapter 10, so that'll be a while. EX solutions. What's this? Well, there are exercises at the end of every chapter. So the back of chapter exercises. Okay. The author has published the solutions here. So this is a real good opportunity if you want to do some practice uh, to do the exercise and then go back and look at uh, the solution provided by the um, author. Okay, and so we are not going to be using for our homework exercises. We're not going to be using these. We have a separate set of exercises we're going to be using for that. Okay, so that's what's there. Let's talk next about MGS-EX starts. When we're working on our homework exercises, we're going to be working on a database called My Guitar Shop. That's what MGS is. And these are the files that we use to create the database. And there are a couple of examples in here as well. But the thing that we're going to run is we're going to run create My Guitar Shop, and we're going to run that to load up that database. We'll do this before we're done with the tutorial. Okay. And this was not available from the companion site for the book. This is only available to instructors. So that's the reason I've put together a custom download. This Java and PHP contains some sample code of how to use MySQL from a Java program and from a PHP program. And we'll show you that code at the end of chapter 1, but that's not something that we do in the course. All right. So we're going to, so we have the data on our machines. Now we need to generate the databases. So let's close all these things. We're not going to need them. We're going to do the work we need to do now with Workbench. Looks like our last tutorial just started to upload. Very good. So let's go. I have an icon down here in the dock for MySQL Workbench. So I'm going to click on that and fire that up. And it's come up on my other monitor, so I'll bring it over here. Okay, and now I'm going to click on this local instance. That's going to take me into a MySQL instance. And as you can see, here do we have, well, on the left side, we've got the navigation panel, okay? And here in the middle, here on the top, I guess, is the editor panel. It currently has a script open called Query 2. What happens if we close that? It opens Query 1. Okay. In the Mac version of this product, there's a script always open. So if you close the last one, it creates one. So we closed one, it created two. Okay, so you can never get this to go gray. In the Windows version you can, but not in the Mac version. And down here at the bottom, we have a panel that has the console output that happens when we run our scripts. Okay, so the first thing we want to do here is we want to run the script that's going to create the three databases that go with the textbook, AP, EX, and OM. So let's go to the directory. Here we go to the toolbar. The second of the icons is the one that opens scripts. So we go to that. And I've got things set up so we go right to documents. And of course, I want to double click on this MySQL 3E data because I have it. I manipulated the name to get it to sort to the top. So I'm going to double click on that. And then I'm going to go to the directory for DB setup. I'm going to double click on that. And then I'm going to highlight create databases. There's one script that creates all three. And then I'm going to go down to the bottom and click the open button. And here it is. So you can see we have an editor tab for the create databases script. And if you go through it, there's a lot of code here. Okay, and right now it looks pretty technical and pretty daunting. We're going to learn how to write a script like this when we get to chapters 10 and 11. Okay, so have some patience. We'll learn all this stuff in due course. Okay, so now we want to run the script. A couple things we want to do first. First thing is I'd like to do is I'd like to make sure that the console area has been cleared. Now here you can see it has been cleared, but if it's not, you can right click and you can choose clear. Clear, there we go. And now it's empty. Then we know when we run a script that all of the lines down in the console relate to what we just ran. There's a toolbar for each editor panel, and there are two icons that are lightning bolts. One has an I-beam on it, that's the one on the right, and the other one is just a plain lightning bolt. I prefer the one on the left. Okay, so that's the one that I use. Okay, and the one on the left kind of operates in two ways. And it depends on whether or not you have highlighted some text in the editor. Okay, so if you've highlighted either a word or a line or multiple lines in the editor, if you click on the plain lightning bolt, the left one, it will try to run just the part of the script that you highlighted. I do that sometimes, but my main use case is that I want to run the whole script. So I can do that. Well, you just don't have anything highlighted. You just put the cursor somewhere safe, like I like to put it in the upper left, or you could put it down here, or you could put it down here. I'm going to go back to my upper left. And that means run the whole script. So I'm just going to click on the plain lightning bolt on the left, and it's going to run the whole script. And you can see there are a lot of lines of output down here. And how do you read the output on the console? Well, the most important thing is that there's a little icon at the beginning of every line of output on the console. And if it ran successfully, it's got a green check mark. If there was a warning, it has a yellow triangle. If it failed, there is a red ball with an X in it. Okay. Generally speaking, in these load scripts, we can tolerate warnings, but not errors. So here we're going to look back through it and make sure over on the left side that we have all either green or yellow icons, and we do. So that looks like a good sign. Okay. Now, where do we show the schemas that are loaded? Well, we should be showing them over here in this schema navigation panel. And all that we have here now is the schema called sys, which is a MySQL internals database. So what do we do? Well, this is a panel you need to refresh. So we're going to go up to the top where it says schemas and then over to the right to the refresh icon and click it. Okay. Oh, and now in addition to to sys, we have AP, EX, and OM. Now we're going to use AP a lot in all the chapters. We're going to use a little bit of EX. I don't think we use OM in any of the chapters that we cover in our course. So let's click on the triangle and expand to AP. And we've got tables here. We have a list of tables. And let's do the same for EX. That's working fine. And OM. And that's working fine. I just want to mention that a problem that we have sometimes with these is when we go to expand the database, we'll get these things that say that they're fetching the tables, that they're fetching all the parts. If that happens to you, well, then I think what you want to do is you want to close the Workbench product and reopen it. Now, how do you close a Workbench product on the Mac? On the Mac, I don't have a lot of luck in the most recent version of Workbench of reopening it once I close it. So what I do is either I go up to the menu at the top where it says MySQL Workbench, and I click and I say quit. Either that will do it, or I just simply go to the red ball, although it's not a red ball, it's a gray ball in the upper left, and I close it. And then let's do that. So I closed it. And with the typical Mac application, you could go down to the dock and you'd be able to open it again just by clicking on Workbench. But unfortunately, it doesn't want to reanimate, okay? So how do you get out of that problem? Well, you right-click on the Workbench and you say quit. So when I'm working in the Mac version of this, I quit myself out of Workbench, and then every time I come back and open it, I get a fresh copy. Now, why this is a problem, I don't know, but it's been a problem for several years. So don't expect it to be fixed too fast. Okay, so let's go back to the local instance. Okay, we got A, P, E, X, and OM. That's good. So let's demonstrate to ourselves that these work. Okay, so let's work with AP. All right. Here's what we can do. We're going to be working with AP a lot. So click on the triangle. First, we need to refresh the schemas, of course, to make sure that we have them all. And then we expand AP. Then we expand tables. Okay. And one that I like to look at is vendors. Okay. So how can we look at the data that's in the vendors table? Well, hover over the vendors table itself, and you'll see there are three icons that pop up to the right. And we'll learn about all of them eventually, but the one that we want now is the rightmost. And this shows a grid with all the data in the table. So let's click on this. And here we go. Okay, so we get this result grid, okay, which pops up in the bottom of the editor panel. And as you can see, this is the data that's in the vendors table. And if we go all down, the vendor IDs go to 123, and I think we're missing one of the vendor IDs. I think there may only be 122 rows. And how do I know that? Well, look here. This was actually created by running a query, and we can see 122 rows were returned. Oh, okay. Well, this was an SQL query. I thought we just clicked on an icon. Well, one of the things I really like about this Workbench product is that when you click on icons, instead of doing things magically, if this is a thing that you could do in SQL, it generally just shows you the SQL that does it and it runs it. So here, when we said that we wanted to see all the data in vendors, it wrote a query, select asterisk, that's all columns, from ap.vendors. So that says the vendors table that's part of the AP schema or AP database. And we just get the result set from that query back in this grid. Okay, so what's kind of interesting is that we could do that ourselves. So we could say, let's see what's in the terms. Let's see what's in the terms table. So we could just say we want to create a new script. So go up to this upper toolbar, and the first of the icons is create a new script. It has a plus. Do that, and then we could say select asterisk, that's all columns, from terms. Oh, at this point we have to tell it what the database is to ap-terms. Okay, and in our class we always end an SQL statement with a semicolon. He doesn't always do that in the textbook, but it's a good practice that I want everybody to adopt. Okay, so how could we do this? Well, let's just run it. Let's click on the lightning bolt. And here are the terms. Okay, so when we come over here and we hover over a table and then we go over and we click the rightmost icon, well, it's an alternative to coding the query ourselves. Okay. Now, you'll note that we had to prefix the name of the table with the name of the schema or database. Now, we're not going to have to do that. When we finally learn how to do a select like this in chapter 3, we're going to learn a way to tell it in the beginning what the database is that we're working with. Something that you'll see in the book, and you can do, although we're not going to rely on it in the exercises that we do for the class, there is a feature of Workbench where you can tell it which of the databases you want to be working with right now. And that is you double click on the name of the database over here in the Navigator panel. So if we double click on AP and we come off of it, let's do this, you'll see that up here AP is in bold. That means that it's the current database. So if we don't say what database we want it to work on, it'll assume that we mean AP. And if, of course, you want it to be OM, you would double click on OM. And now that would be highlighted. Now that's a nice feature of Workbench. It's not one that we're going to rely on in the long run, but it's one I wanted to show you. It's one that we learn in the very beginning of the book. Okay, so we have AP, EX, and OM. We're going to be looking at them at a lot of the lectures, primarily AP. And if you want to do the end of chapter exercises, for the most part, at least the chapters that we do, almost everything uses the AP database. Just a few things use EX. The use of OM is in chapters that we don't cover in our class. Okay, so we have almost everything we need, but we don't have the database that we're going to be using for our own homework assignments, and that's called My Guitar Shop. Okay, so how do we load that? Well, before we load it, let's clean up the environment that we're in here. Okay, so if we want to clear this console, we hover over the console and we right click and we say clear. Now that's clear. Okay, this editor panel and the result set grid are all part of an editor panel. So for instance, if we close, let's go to vendors. If we close the vendors tab, it's going to close them both. Okay. How can we close everything? Well, in the macOS version of this, you can't close all of the tabs, but you can close what we typically the first tab is always blank. Okay, because we can never get this thing completely empty in the Mac version. So what I typically do is I right click on the tab for the one that is empty, and then I pick close other tabs. Okay, and if any of them have new code in it that hasn't been saved, it gives you the opportunity to save them. I'm not going to save them. I'll say don't save. And now we get back to the point we just got that one blank tab. Okay, so it's kind of good practice to do this, I think. All right, so let's go off and do the next thing, which is to load the My Guitar Shop database. So let's go up to the upper toolbar. The second of the icons is the one for loading a script. We'll click on that. Okay. And let's see where we want to go. I'm just going to go back to documents because I know I can get to my top level there. So I'm going to double click that. Then I'm going to do double click on MGS for My Guitar Shop EX starts. Okay, that's good. Now, if I want to open this Create My Guitar Shop, I can do it really two ways. The way I've shown you so far is highlight the line that has the file in it you want to open, and then go down and click the Open button. As an alternative, you can just go and double click on the file that you want. So I'm going to double click on myguitarshop.sql, and it's just going to open it up. Okay, and I check to see that I'm not currently highlighting a block of code. I just want to have the cursor there plain, and then I'm going to take the left of the lightning bolts, and that's going to run that script. And now I'm going to look down on the console and make sure that the result of each of the statements in the script was either a green check or a yellow warning. And we have a lot of green checks. One yellow warning up top. In these kind of database loading scripts, yellow warnings are usually, we're going to expect some of those. Okay, now let's look over here in this navigation panel, and you'll notice we don't have My Guitar Shop yet. And that's because we need to go up where it says schemas and then go over to the right and click on the refresh button. And here's My Guitar Shop. So we're going to click on the little triangle to the left of that and expand it and expand the tables. Okay. And we're gonna learn a whole lot about these. These are going to be in a whole lot of our homework exercises. Let's just take a look at customers. Okay, so I'm going to close the script that we used to load it. I'm going to clear the console down here. And to look at customers, I'm just going to do it the easy way. I'm going to hover over the customers table and then go off to the right and click on the grid icon. And now we can see these are the customers. We've got 8 of them. Okay. And we've got categories of products. We're going to learn about all this as we go. Let's do the same thing for categories. And we see in a guitar shop, we've got 4 categories of products: basses, drums, guitars, and keyboards. Okay, well that looks good. All right, so this all seems to be working fine. And this is all that we're going to cover in this tutorial. So, and this is all that we need to be able to follow along with the chapters if we want to run some of the code that is in the textbook in the chapters. This is what we need if we want to practice on the ended chapter exercises. And of course, with the My Guitar Shop, this is what we're going to need to do our homework assignments with. Okay, so that's it for this time. I'm going to say bye until next time. Bye bye.